When your nervous system brings you that sense of enough embodied safety, then we can bring our passion and our purpose into the world, and we can find joy, and we can fall in love with all sorts of things. And when we are in a survival state, that is unavailable to us, not because we lose our desire for it, but because our biology closes the door to it.
Welcome to Oxygen for Educators. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Kinder, and you'll meet Chris Kent Phelps in just a bit. It's our hope to bring you thought-provoking, unscripted conversations full of actionable ideas to fuel your important work in the world. Thanks for tuning in. This space is for you. Hi, Chris.
Hello, Michelle Kinder.
Great to see you.
You too, you too.
This one feels extra special to me because it was extra special to me. How did it land for you?
Well, in several ways, because I was seeing it from your eyes and knowing how much it would mean to you. And it helped me understand you a lot, which we'll talk about after the listeners have a chance to listen to the interview. But plus, I just felt like I learned so much. Like, I'm going to be a junkie. I'm so excited.
Welcome to the cult. In the cult we're talking about, everyone, you're going to get to meet Deb Dana today, and Chris will give you her bio, but I have studied with her, and she's just been a transformational figure in my professional career. So it was such an honor to get to have this interview with her, and I hope you all get as much out of it as I've gotten out of knowing her and knowing her work.
So let me read her bio. Deb Dana is a clinician, consultant, author, and international lecturer on polyvagal theory-informed work with trauma survivors, and she is the leading translator of this scientific work to the public and mental health professionals. And I can say, after listening to your interview, I know you feel this way, so I'll say we believe that her work could just be transformational in the education space for educators, for students, for classrooms, just for school culture. So I'm so excited that you brought her to the table and that listeners are going to get to hear from Deb, who also developed the signature Rhythm of Regulation clinical training series called The Science of Feeling Safe Enough to Fall in Love with Life and Take the Risks of Living. And if that is not inspiring, I don't know what is. But Deb delves into the intricacies of how we can all use an understanding of the principles of polyvagal theory to change the way we navigate our daily lives. Her work is for curious people from diverse backgrounds and all walks of life, which really spoke to me. And it just really helped me understand the importance of understanding our own nervous system, which I've heard you say forever. But listening to y'all's interview was just helpful and inspiring to me. So I hope that it will be to our listeners in the education space.
Fabulous. Let's take a listen.
Okay.
Hi, Deb.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
Well, I'm giddy, if I can tell you the truth. I'm giddy to get to talk to you because you are one of my key teachers, and I'm obsessed with teachers. So I'm always looking for people to learn from, and you have taught me so much. And everyone that has worked with me since I studied with you, they're like, okay, we got it. We know you love Deb Dana. She is amazing. And we are also reading her beautiful work. And it's just accessible and touching. And you're one of the most embodied, subtle masters that I've studied under. And I just thank you.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me. That really hits my heart, because my passion really is in inviting people to get to know their nervous systems and teaching and getting the word out there. So thank you. And thank you for continuing to spread it.
Oh, it's my joy. And one of the things you use is a definition, I've not heard a better one. You say that your work is about the science of feeling safe enough to fall in love with life. And I thought that might be a perfect place to start, if you'll just tell us more about that.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, Steve Porges, Steve, my dear friend, would talk about the science of connection, but I like to be a little more friendly, I suppose. So I really do think it's about the science of feeling safe enough to fall in love with life, because when your nervous system brings you that sense of enough embodied safety, then we can bring our passion and our purpose into the world, and we can find joy, and we can fall in love with all sorts of things. And when we are in a survival state, that is unavailable to us, not because we lose our desire for it, but because our biology closes the door to it. And I think it's so good for people to understand that when I'm feeling disconnected, or I'm feeling as though I'm in danger in some way, my passion goes to the background and I can't access it. Right. So I don't have the biological ability to do this with you. If I'm in a survival state, we're not going to be able to do this. Right. Because my system is going to say, no, unsafe. Right. And so we begin to look at people differently. We can look at people and say, well, it's not that they no longer want to be here or want to, do the work. They're now dysregulated and can't, right? So when we change from unwilling to unable, it changes how we think of ourselves and how we think of others. So that was where I started, that fall in love with life, which you can only do when you feel that biological sense of safety, right? You can't think your way to safety. It's not a top-down cognitive experience. Your nervous system has to bring alive the qualities of that ventral place, and we can talk about that later, but it brings alive the state that allows you to then engage with life and engage with others, with nature, with spirit. Yeah.
Mm. The way that like removes the shame spirals and the pathologizing from just our systems protecting us is so useful.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because we're human, and we make up stories. That's what our brain is supposed to do. It's supposed to make up a story to make sense of what's happening in our body. Actually, our nervous system sends information to the brain, and the brain makes up a story. So when we get this flood of anxiety, the nervous system makes up a story, and it's often a story about what's happening out there, about the other person, in service of our safety. Absolutely. But the story gets skewed, and then we believe that story to be true. And if you think about in your own life, it happens to us all, all the time in small ways. You're in a moment and you're, disconnected or having an argument with someone, and you make it about them. The story's about how they are bad, or they don't want to do whatever it is, rather than, oh, they just got too many cues of danger. Right. And their nervous system is now protecting them. Right. So I do love the way it does take the shame, the blame, even the self-blame, self-criticism. So it takes it all away, and you look at it through the lens of the nervous system, and you see things very differently. Yeah.
Like
and
gentle eyes.
It's hard to do.
It's
Just wanted
hard
to say
do.
that. It takes a lot of practice. And even when you've practiced a long time, still there are moments when we fall out of that. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's like the generosity of having access to it, but you're still in constant relationship with it. And to hear you say that that's true for you makes me feel a lot better, because I feel like a beginner, and I've been like dramatically attached to this work for over a decade, and I still feel like personally, in terms of it shaping my days, I feel like a beginner.
Yeah. Well, I think we all are.
Yeah.
I feel like a beginner. There's some days when at the end of the day I reflect and I think, ooh, I teach much better than I practice. And other days it's like, oh, I did pretty well today.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
100%. Some of the things I want to get into will help if people hear from you about the ladder, even though we've talked on the podcast about it and shared it in the magazine as well. But I would love for them to hear you talk about the 3 key states and the ladder.
Yeah. Yeah. So Steve's brilliant theory helps us understand that our nervous systems have three basic states that we move in and out of in small ways all the time, right? And so I was trying to figure out, how do I bring this to my clients? Because the theory is lovely, but I need to have a way to actually use it. So a ladder is what I came up with, because the ladder sort of, for me, brings alive the way that we move subtly in nuanced ways, through regulation, dysregulation, disconnection, and back again. And it is a hierarchy. So we move in a certain order, right? So the ladder for me was like, ooh, this really works. It may not work for you. You can put a different way of having, an order, but in the beginning, a ladder is an easy way to sort of begin to see the states. At the top of the ladder is that place ventral that I referenced a little earlier, the state of safety and connection, right? Where we're safe enough, organized enough, regulated enough so that our brain is working with us and we can problem solve, we can plan, we can bring our purpose into the world. All of these beautiful things happen here in ventral. And I would like to say that I think ventral recently has gotten sort of a bad rap because people equate it with calm.
Mm-hmm.
It is calm, but it's so much more than calm, right? So if you think, oh, I have to find calm, no, you're just looking to find that place where you feel safe enough in the world to have whatever flavor of ventral is for you. Calm is not one I go to very often. Do you?
Compared to the average bear, I present calm and can feel calm. Compared to my husband, I look like histrionic. So it just depends on who you compare me to.
Exactly. I have more of I feel like I'm in a flow, right? So that's sort of my favorite flavor of ventral, is I'm in the flow, whatever that means. That's my way of feeling it. So, people can find their own flavors, but ventral is the place where we can experience both physical and psychological well-being, right? Because the nervous system manages both your physical state and your psychological state, right? So we want to find ways to come to ventral. When we dysregulate, we want to have pathways that bring us back, and we want to be able to stay there and really savor what it's like to be there. That said, none of us are there all the time. Right? We move out of regulation all the time. In the first place we go, we move down the ladder to the middle of the ladder where the sympathetic nervous system lives. And that's the system of fight and flight, which most people recognize immediately, right? Cortisol, adrenaline, anxiety, anger, right? Those are the two pathways of that survival state. And some of us are more anxious than angry, and others of us are more angry than anxious. And some people do both equally. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Right. So I would have told myself I was much more anxious, but over the past maybe 6 months, I think I've used more of the anger pathway. So it can change, right? But both are there available to you. And when you're in that place of sympathetic fight and flight, your prefrontal cortex, your brain has now gone into hypoactive mode. So it's not there to help you problem solve and plan and make rational decisions. You're now just in a survival state where your nervous system is going to do whatever it needs to do to make sure you survive till the next moment, right? Which is why when we come back to ventral and reflect on what happened, we can think, wow, that was crazy, right? Or I don't know why I did that. Or, oh, I wish I didn't do that, right? But your nervous system doesn't assign motivation or moral meaning. It simply takes an action to keep you safe, right? Our brain does all the rest afterwards. But in the moment, the nervous system just says, I'm going to get you out of here because that's how you're going to survive. Or you're going to have a fight, or you're going to throw this, or you're going to scream, whatever it is. That's how you're going to survive, right? So that's the first survival state that every human goes to when they leave regulation. If that doesn't solve the problem, we then can go to the bottom of the ladder. We're still on the ladder, thank goodness. We're always on this ladder somewhere. But the very bottom of the ladder, which is dorsal disconnection, disappear, collapse, shut down. So all of that chaotic, disorganized energy that you were flooded with in sympathetic now drains from your system. And so you have no energy, no interest. Right? You're down and out. That's how I think about it, right? And again, it's a adaptive survival response. there are times when the best response is to become invisible.
Yeah.
Don't be, fly under the radar.
Yeah.
Right? We think about, I'm thinking about kids, and kids who get very, very quiet, who disappear, right? And we often make a story up about them, right? That they're bored, they don't care, or they're the good ones, they never make any trouble.
Yep.
Right? When we want to be curious about, what is their nervous system doing right now? Right? The sympathetically charged ones, we make up different stories about, but they're easy to see because they're loud and they're big and they're making noise and they're, all of this is going on, right? We still make up stories, but you see them differently. You often don't see the kids who have gone to dorsal as being in a survival response.
And they can be in the same or more trouble, and our stories accidentally make them more invisible.
Yes, they're compliant. I don't have to worry about them. They never cause any trouble, right? And yet they're suffering terribly inside because dorsal is the path of last resort for the nervous system, right? So it's the last stop for the nervous system. This is the only thing that I can do to keep you alive, right? So it's that total shutdown place. And interestingly, when we come back from that shutdown, we have to bring some energy back into our system. And oftentimes it gets messy, right? Because we travel through sympathetic. And if we don't have some guidance about how to get through sympathetic, it can get really loud and big and full of disorganized energy and messy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about all of the educators who might be listening, thinking of themselves moving through that stage messy, thinking through a coworker who they might have a story about the way they're showing up, but maybe looking at it through the nervous system lens, it changes a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to make up stories because that's what our brain is supposed to do. And it gives us some sense of, I know where I am because I have this story about the other, right? And I've learned over the course of my working with people is my story is very often not right, right? I want to be curious, not make an assumption, right? It may be that this person who's very quiet is just absolutely fine and just going along, right? Or it may be that they have totally shut down and disappeared because they're feeling intense threat, right? On a nervous system level, not, maybe in the real world, there's not an intense threat coming at them, but their nervous system is feeling that, right? So curiosity is what we want to bring to this. And you can't be curious unless you have an anchor in ventral, right? If you are in a survival state, curiosity is not available to you, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so when people are getting first introduced to this, how do you help them get to know those anchors so they can find their way back to curiosity in a way that doesn't become self-punish, like one more reason to self-punish?
Right. We do have to be so careful, right? To remember, two things I say. One, it's your wiring that's taking you somewhere. It's not your willingness, right? And I think that really helps. And then I also say, and that doesn't make you not responsible for figuring it out and coming back to regulation and then cleaning up the mess that you likely made when you were dysregulated, right? I do that all the time. I dysregulate and I come back and I go, okay, now I have to go make a repair with whoever I just,
Yeah,
this connection with. So we want to make sure that we remember that we're responsible for our nervous system, right? And in order to be responsible, we have to learn how it works. And we have to have ways that we know will help us come back to ventral, right? So, how we learn how it works is we get to know each of our states, right? And I have my personal profile map that I'm happy to, you've probably sent it out anyway, but happy to, I'll send it to you with the directions because that really is where we start.
Okay, great.
Right?
Yeah, we'll
To
put it in
get
the
to know
notes.
how does my body show me I'm either regulated or dysregulated in one of those states? What do I think? What do I feel? What do I do? Get to know because your system and mine in some ways are very similar, in other ways are going to be very different. right? And then you get to know for yourself. And then what I encourage people to do is find somebody in your network of people who you feel safe enough with that you could share your maps. Because if I have a coworker and I know their map and they know mine, this is great because when I'm feeling that down and out, which is my place that my system takes me a lot, they might recognize that and they just simply say, "How you doing?"
Yeah.
Right? I noticed that, and they'll know what they're noticing, and I can do the same for someone else. Because in the beginning, finding the way back to ventral is hard to do on our own. Right? We need people who are speaking the same language and are in it with us, right? So that's where we start. We start with getting to know our own system and then finding at least one other person, if not a group of others, that we can share this way of looking at the world with, right? So you don't feel you're the only one. It's hard to be the only one.
I think that's so beautiful that you give someone insight into your map, which is so sacred and so vulnerable. And then they hold it in that way and are able to say, oh, it's almost like I got a cheat code to what might be going on based on what I'm seeing externally. And I can show up for you better because you let me in this way.
Right. Right.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It really is a very sweet, I call it, we create autonomic intimacy, right? Which is such a lovely thing to create, right? And I often will know with other people, I may not know the details of their life, but I know their nervous system. And that's the important part. I don't need to know the details of their life. I just need to know when they're suffering on a nervous system level and when they're regulated. So besides having somebody, check in and say, "How you doing?" because I notice you're really quiet. Right. I also want somebody to say, "Ooh, it feels like this is a ventral kind of day. Let's celebrate that." Right. We want to celebrate those. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Like there's champagne bubbles around your head today. What's
Exactly.
going on? Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because again, that's the way the nervous system shapes in a new direction. And I will say it shapes all the time. You're not stuck in the patterns that you're in this moment. Your system is taking in information and will continue to shape. And in order to do that, we need to both resolve what's bringing us into survival states, so those cues of danger, and actively experience the safety and the connection. So it's a both and. Right. And I'm a clinician. So in the clinical world, we often focus on the what's wrong. And we forget that in order to fully thrive, we also have to focus on what's right. Right. You might do it better in schools than focusing on the what's right. I don't know,
Yeah.
but it's so needed. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it
Yeah.
expands the more we look at it, and the more it gets more dimensional and more
Yes.
technicolor. And
Yeah. Right. Oh, these are lovely, lovely. I love that, thinking about Technicolor. I just had an image in my mind. There was like, boom, it was all
Yeah.
colors.
Yeah.
Ooh, that was nice. Yeah. See, that moment was a moment that my system felt connected to yours, and it took something that you said, and it landed for me. And those small moments happen all the time. We want to recognize those. We want to stop for a minute and say, "Ooh, that was great." Right. And you and I shared it together. So we had that reciprocity, which is a nervous system need to feel connected to another nervous system. But I also could have just done it myself, and I could have felt it. Ooh, and I feel it growing. Yes. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, but those little moments, it's the tiny moments, the micro moments that are important, right? We tend to think we need a great big long experience of feeling great in order to get the change, and we don't. The nervous system says small moments over and over are really what makes the change. And I think that takes a lot of pressure off us.
Yeah.
Right? I can find a small moment. I just found one. It was
Yeah.
lovely. And now when I think about it, my system takes it in, and my system's going to carry that. It's now in autonomic memory.
Yeah.
Which is so lovely.
It's
Right?
so lovely. And that concept of micro moments being the language of the nervous system, I really want our listeners to tune in, because educators are famous for, just grinding it out till they're at depletion, and then I'll take a week off and that'll be my time to kind of let it all go. And what I'm hearing from you and what I know from your work is that thing that happens on vacation, we can access micro moments of that all day long, every day, certainly every evening, certainly every weekend. And yeah, that seems like such a profound shift.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And, when I tell that to people and I say that this is not just, to find something, good to spend a moment with, this is shaping your system. This is a powerful way to have more of that ventral energy that is so needed for well-being. So you're taking care of yourself in these tiny moments. And then my clients, as soon as you gave the context for it, they were all in. It's like, oh, okay, right? And so it's not just a luxury sort of thing. It's a basic need of the nervous system. And when you said, power through, that's the other thing I wanted to talk about. The nervous system doesn't work on that principle of just power through or no pain, no gain. It does not. It wants you to stretch, yes, so that you're doing something a little more intensely, a little different, right? You're stretching your system, but then you're going to come to a tipping point where if you keep going past that tipping point, you're going to go into a survival response because your system's going to say too much. And as soon as you go into a survival response, you again recreate the old patterns, right? You just light up the old patterns and change is no longer possible. Right? And I want to say that so that people really hear that. It's not that I don't want to change. It is no longer available to me. So that the key to this is to know, when am I reaching my tipping point? And then take a rest there, take a moment there, take a breath there, do something different there. Don't say, oh, I've just got, 3 more things to finish before I can stop. Your nervous system will not appreciate that, right?
I mean, and I know these amazing listeners, and I know 9 out of 10 of them are thinking that they're the exception to this rule.
Right. Uh-huh. Yeah. Well, let's give a little space for that. Every nervous system has its own limit, right? And I do say there's no right or wrong way. There's just the way of your nervous system. So you have to get to know your nervous system, right? And your limit when you reach the tipping point is not set in stone. It changes depending on your level of resilience, and your level of resilience is dependent on how much is coming at your nervous system. Right. So if you're in a time when you've got, a huge to-do list and a big deadline list, your tipping point is going to be, smaller. It's going to come sooner than if you're in a time of, I have all the time in the world to plan, and I just want to do 3 more lesson plans and I'm going to be okay.
Yes.
Right. So, again, it's know your nervous system. So the thing I'm always, asking people to do is, if you listen to your nervous system, what is it wanting you to know right now? Because it's always trying to tell you something. And your symptoms, whatever your symptoms are your nervous system trying to tell you something, whether it's a headache or, my desk is a mess. I can't get organized. I'm short tempered. I'm tired. That's your nervous system trying to communicate something to you. And if you don't listen, it will simply get louder and take more extreme action, which is why we have so many people who end up in burnout.
Yeah.
Because their nervous system has not been able to get their attention. And so it goes to the last resort. It says, I will just stop you.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the mapping helps you catch the subtle. So you're like, it's like a marriage with your own nervous system. Like you're never done learning about it.
Right. Right. And it changes. It keeps changing. Right. I just turned 73 and my nervous system, I noticed, is changing yet again. Right. In different phases of life, it does different things. And so we're always trying to befriend. And I say, when you make a friend, you don't just meet somebody and then they're your friend for life, right? You meet somebody and you build that friendship. You continue in that conversation of the friendship. That's what you're doing with your nervous system, right? You don't just learn the 5 things that make your nervous system happy and you're done. It doesn't work that way, right? I might know
does not work
5
that
things
way.
that today my nervous system says this will be good, but tomorrow it can be something very different. And for me, that's the joy of it. For
Yeah.
other people, they want more of a a protocol or a structure.
Yeah.
Well, there isn't one for the nervous system. It's
Yeah.
inviting you to be in a dance with it forever. Yeah.
Forever.
Mhm.
And the protocol is hold that question with gentle curiosity. What does my nervous system need right now? And then the other question you taught me to hold, what does your nervous system or their nervous system, whoever you're in the room with, the kids, the coworkers, your family, that walking around in the world with that curiosity about myself and about other people has changed everything for me.
Hi, I'm Katie Worden, producer of Oxygen for Educators. I want to spotlight our sponsor, TackieBox. TackieBox is an elementary school program that pairs innovative content with a tactile tool in daily practice to teach children to self-monitor their own words and actions and their responses to others. It's a proven tool that reduces behavior incidents by 66%. Through daily self reflection, students build self awareness, self regulation, and meaningful connections. TackieBox is a light lift for teachers with a big impact on student well being. Go to tackiebox.com to learn more and become a TackieBox district.
I was thinking about teachers who have a incredibly challenging job because they have many, many, many nervous systems all together that are all going in different directions. And how do you create an environment that feels safe for all those nervous systems, right? That is really hard to do. Really hard to do. And I think one of the things that I often think about is on any given day, you're going to have some of the kids who are regulated. Right. And on that day, they become your allies and they help bring regulation to their friends, to their classmates, because tomorrow they may be the ones who need some help. Right. There's this lovely joy in being able to know I can offer and I can receive. And that I think is one of the gifts we'd like our little humans, our big humans to be able to do, right? To know I can offer and I can ask for help too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I can be from little bitty on, and most of us are learning it in the on years. We can begin to understand, like, how do I notice when I'm in green and aggressively co-regulate? And how do I know? I say green for ventral, and how do I notice when I'm in a survival state and then manage my impact?
Right.
Like,
Right.
I'm probably going to do some harm today if I'm not really careful with how I am and who I'm with, and yeah.
Yeah, I mean, those are really important for us to be able to recognize that, to notice it and name it, and then know what do I do, right? And so, when you're in that sympathetically charged, way too much energy, just chaotic, disorganized, what are some things, I like to think, I create a resource list. What are some things that might help me? Right. We have a regulating resources map that we do, and you need a lot of things on your list. I like people to create a big menu because like today it might be, I'm going outside and I'm going to go on a fast walk. And tomorrow I don't have the ability to do that, but I can turn on some really fast music and enjoy the beat. Right. So to create a list of things is really important. And I have to create the list when I don't need them. Because when I need them, I have no capacity to create a list. So create a list and then have the list somewhere where it's handy for you, because when you need it, you can say, oh, I made this list already. My nervous system has already told me what would help. Right. And what helps in sympathetic, it's going to be something very different in dorsal. Right. In dorsal, I find music appears for me in most places.
Same.
In sympathetic, it's really driven music with a big beat, and I play it really loud. And in dorsal, it's a very different sort of, gentle, soft. It just, this sort of gentle movement, right? And then in ventral, I want to sing along. So it's, somebody whose voice I love and I know the lyrics. So, so it's not that it's not that it has to be a different resource in each place, but it's differently experienced
How
in
you
each
use
place.
it.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Oh, you had us, when I was studying with you, you had us do a playlist. And I
Yes.
still I have 4. I have my dorsal, I have my sympathetic, and I have my ventral. And then
Yeah.
I've got a combined.
Yes. Yes.
Can you share that idea in case anyone wants to try it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's lovely. And I had a client who I talk about, she was my musicologist because she's the one that taught me that music was so powerful for her. So yes, you find songs that help you be with your sympathetic in a safe way. Music has that capacity to help us be safely with suffering and distress. Right. So what helps you be with your sympathetic? And it usually has a beat, a big beat, and it's loud, and it can be fast. And then dorsal, what helps you be in that place of feeling lost and alone? Because when you're listening to music, and even when someone's singing, you're not alone.
Lyrics are a big
Yeah.
piece of it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then ventral is fun because everybody has a different taste in music. So your ventral mind could be like, you might play yours for me and I go, wow, that really not mine. Right. And somebody else might say, oh, I'm right there with you. That's the beauty of music, right?
Yeah.
It touches your nervous system, right? It's a nervous system experience, right? So music is, create your playlists. And I will say that, the first time I did that, we created a ventral, a sympathetic, and a dorsal, and she did it in that order. And she, emailed me that night and she said, that was not good. I ended up in dorsal. Right. I said, yeah, so let's not do that. The one that's a mix takes you down and up. It takes you through all your states because that's the natural flow of the nervous system.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you told us always have your last song be ventral so
Exactly.
that
Always
you
end
go
in
out into
ventral.
the world.
Yeah. Yes. But I mean, those are easy things to do. You're looking for resources that are easy to reach for, easy to create, easy to reach for, right? Music is one of those. There might be movement is usually something that, there are various forms of movement that people like, even just in dorsal, remembering movement rather than actually doing it, brings your motor cortex alive. So brings the flavor of movement into your system very gently. And sometimes that's all that is needed. Sometimes it's like, I cannot possibly move, but I have this beautiful memory of moving. And as you remember it, you can feel your system beginning to come back to life. Right. So, yeah. And again, it's all about giving your system the choice to show you the way that it wants you to create a resource. Right. And which again, I love about that. There's so much choice and you can be creative. Some people like art in various forms. Nature is pretty consistently a way to bring some regulation back. And even for people who don't live in a place where nature is surrounding them in a way that appeals to their system, pictures of nature have been shown to do the same. Right. So, create a collage. And I'm thinking about, if I had a classroom, I did this with families, and they would all create their own collages, right? And then they would have their place. That's how their system feels, welcome. And they were so different. And I can imagine in a classroom, you would have so many different ways that a system would say, here, this is what helps me. And then in families, they would share with each other and be curious about, tell me more about how does that picture of, whatever it is, the bird flying, how does that impact your system? Right. Because for another family member, it was terrifying. Right.
Right.
It was fascinating. Yeah.
More of that autonomic intimacy you were
Yep.
talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. So movement, breathing, there are lots of ways of breathing, music, some kind of connection.
Animals.
And, because we need connection with someone our system feels welcome with, right? And we want to be careful because I can be in ventral and I can be, ready to offer my ventral to you. And I have to be careful how I do that because I can be too big,
Mm-hmm.
too kind. My clients would say, don't use your kind voice today. Right. I said, okay, I've got another one I'll use. I'll use the competent one rather than the kind one. It's right. But,
Get it.
But a system can say, oh, that's too soft, too kind, or
Yeah.
say, oh, I need to feel more of you. Right. So again, it's this way of discovering, how does that nervous system need me to show up today?
Right.
Yeah.
You flipped for me again in such an embodied way, on what it means to like live in service of my nervous system, trusting that if I'm doing that work, then whatever I'm meant to do in the world's going to come out of me in a joyful, natural way. I think prior to that, I was classic, like overachiever, do your hair before you go to the hairdresser vibe. Do you know what I mean? So it was just so useful to flip it and just make my life's work living in service of my own nervous system, and that's the best thing I can do for myself and everyone around me.
Yeah. Because when you really attend to your system, when you honor its wisdom, whatever that is, and some days it's hard to honor the wisdom of our system because it's saying, don't do that, or you need to rest, right? And if we trust our system is telling us what it needs, then we can follow it. And when we're in that place of ventral, it's good for us, right? We are feeling the physical well-being and the psychological well-being, and we can use our ventral regulated state in service of healing of others, right? Which I think is that's that dual purpose that comes, feel good myself, and then I can share that with the world. I can help others feel a little bit more safe, a little bit more welcome. Yeah.
My read on the world right now is that it's like tilted so dramatically in the lane of signs of danger that if you don't actively engage in this work, you're going to be in a survival state most of the time, and that's not your fault. It's like by design.
Right.
What do you see?
Yeah, I like to look at nervous systems, because if I look at systems, I mean, even the educational system, I don't even know where to start. I get overwhelmed so easily, and I go to my survival state of shutdown. I disconnect because it's hopeless.
Too
My
much.
system says, why bother? You'll never make a difference, right? But if I go to this system, I can manage this system, and then from here, I can offer out into the world. And what I see as I'm looking at nervous systems is there's great groups of people who are stuck in sympathetic fight and flight. It's huge. That energy is everywhere that I go. And then there's another great group of people who have gone to despair, to hopelessness, and they've sort of disappeared. Right. And we don't have enough people who are anchored in ventral. So nothing can change when the survival states are bigger than the regulated state. So we, again, we need people to find the way to regulation, and then put that regulated energy out into the world so that other people will begin to feel a bit safer. And as they feel a bit safer, they'll begin to find their way to regulation, because the really difficult conversations that we need to have and the change that needs to happen cannot happen when people are in a survival state. We are unable to make those changes. So, for the sake of humanity, we need to find our way to some regulation. And again, none of us are regulated all the time, right? But can I be regulated a little bit longer, a little more intensely than I was a week ago? Am I moving toward finding more access to my regulated system? That's what we're looking for, right?
To me, it completely dismantles the notion of how much I suffer is equivalent to how much I care. It makes it very clear that if you want to express your care in the world in the way that it needs you most, you have to be seeking ventral.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, people ask me if I preference ventral over survival states. And I said, well, I do, because if we don't have access to ventral, we are simply in a survival state, which is sometimes we need to be there. We call it adaptive survival, but I can't get anything done and I can't change anything. I'm simply focused on making it to the next moment, right? So ventral's the essential element for healing and for change. And the lovely thing that I do want to say is every human nervous system has ventral built in, right? Every human has the capacity because it's wired into their biology. So when I worked with trauma survivors, I'd say it's already in there. We do not have to create something out here. It's in there. We just have to uncover the pathway. And the same is true for everybody in the world. It's the common denominator in our human existence. We all have a nervous system that has the capacity for compassion, for care, for kindness, for all of this, right? So it's a lovely, it's just so hopeful, and it's a lovely belief to hold on to. When I look at people, I go, they too have a ventral system that's just waiting. Right. And again, we talk about those pathways. Finding those pathways is our work. Right. And lots of people will go to therapy to get some help finding those pathways, but you don't have to. Right. You can explore on your own. What brings you a moment of feeling okay? And that's where I usually start. Just okay.
Yeah.
Not joyful or
Safe enough.
passionate, but just okay. Right. What's a moment of that? Is there a place in nature? Right. I'm an ocean person. Right. And so I love when I'm by the ocean, hear the ocean, I can feel it. And I'm not, for a good part of the year, but I can remember it. And as I remember it, it comes alive again. Right. So what is one small thing that brings you a moment of joy? And start there. It's
And
starting with one
yeah.
tiny thing.
And don't buy into any of the narratives that have you wanting to deprive yourself of that somehow.
Yeah.
Because it's in service of others.
Right. It's an interesting world when we, we've gone to that place of, thinking, you shouldn't be happy, or you should suffer. Right. It's like, no, you need to be regulated. You need to feel safe. Right? If you don't want to say happy, fine, but safe, right? Unless you feel safe enough in your nervous system, you cannot bring anything good to the world because you are in a protective response, right? So again, the lots of reason to move into the state of connection, which is where we're trying to get this state of connection, and that's ventral.
And your work is so grounded in this notion that this is not individual work. A lot of people hear it and they think it is until they learn about co-regulation. But can you dispel the myth that this is individual work?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because and anybody who's been with kids understands that co-regulation is supposed to come first. We're supposed to co-regulate with a safe other, right? And from that safe platform, we then learn to self-regulate, right? But for so many people in the world, that was not available. And so we self-regulate from a survival place rather than from safety, right? And, I was thinking, thinking the drivenness that you had. I've worked with so many people who are driven, and they think if they aren't driven, they will be not successful in anything, right? Because their system is set up to think I have to do this on my own, right? And if I stop doing this, my clients would say, if I don't do this, I'll die, right? It's that sense of I'm going to just collapse and nothing will happen, right? So we want to go back and really think the nervous system needs to be in connection with other safe nervous systems. We come into the world, we won't survive without another human around us, right? For many of us, we came into the world and that was not a match, nervous system to nervous system, but it helped us survive, right? Over the course of our lifetime, we have to have at least another safe person who we feel that connection to. And some of us want big groups of people, and others of us want just a couple. Again, there's no right or wrong here. It's whatever your system says, that nourishes me, right? But the notion that, independence, because we live in at least in the West here, independence is the thing, do it yourself, right? You could do it on your own. And we say, ooh, but the nervous system so doesn't want that. It wants to do it with another, right? Be safe with another, right? And again, if you think about your life, you can think, is there someone I feel safe with? Is there someone who I would, who I could share my map with, who I could share my, my sense of myself with? And for many people, the answer to that at this moment is no, right? Which doesn't mean it will always be no. Right? You want to, as you're out in the world, you want to think, what am I drawn toward? What nourishes my system? And you begin to put together a list of the qualities that you're looking for in a relationship. And then you'll begin to be able to find those. Right. And then for many people, there are people, but we don't use them in the way that really your system would appreciate. Right. So set up a way to have a conversation, even if it's just to send I have a few people in my world that I just send emojis back and forth to. That's all we need. It's just, oh, yes, here's I have a dorsal emoji, right? You're getting the flavor that I go to this disconnect. That's my safe place when I'm dysregulated. And I have a dorsal emoji and I can send it to my friend and she'll send me back another emoji, which just lets me know I'm seen. I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And I don't want anything else. That's all I want.
Just
right?
There's another nervous system on the planet that I feel safe enough to tell this is how I feel right now.
Exactly. And then other times I'll reach out with a message and I'll just say, ooh, I'm, love to have a chat. Get any time, because I'm really feeling, more of a pull towards a longer conversation. But you create those connections and sometimes, you suffer on the way to creating them. You reach out and you don't get a response. Yeah. And then you have to take care of your own nervous system and say, okay, what do I want to learn from that?
Yeah.
And the learning is not never reach out. The learning is specific to that situation. What were the cues of danger that got sent out that person was unable to respond to me? Right. So again, if we keep looking through the lens of the nervous system, it doesn't become about me being bad. It becomes about there was a disruption between nervous systems, and what was that? Right?
Yeah. That curiosity again.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about co-regulation is, again, there's no one way to do it, right? Some people want touch, some people want proximity, some people want words, some people want eye gaze, other people don't. So it's that curiosity about what's working.
Yeah.
Right? How does this person want to be, in connection? And not taking it personally again, that they don't want to look at me.
Right.
See, no, their nervous system is overwhelmed with eye contact. It makes perfect sense. And just because we can mention it, hearing and seeing are both autonomic experiences, right? And sometimes the question becomes, do you want me to look at you or do you want me to listen to you? Because I can't do both.
Interesting.
Right. And we think about that in parents talking to kids. Look at me when I'm talking to you.
Yeah.
Right. We make meaning out of somebody looking at us.
Yeah.
And we need to be curious to say, oh, maybe they need to look away so that they can actually stay and be here. Right. So, yeah. Again, it's fun when you think about it through the lens of the nervous system.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than through the stories our brain makes up. Yeah.
It really invites the curiosity, kind of like the ventral state invites, that nugget of if you make it your work to get into ventral, stay there as long as you can. A lot of the things that people, and I include myself in this, that we try to problem solve from a survival state,
right.
It's just impossible.
Yep.
Like you said, it's not a choice. It's literally impossible because different parts of our brains have taken over. Then when we're in ventral, or at least anchored there, then that really impossible problem 30 seconds later is just dissolved or resolved. And so, it's like, okay, so the work is befriending your nervous system, because all the other problems sort themselves out quite nicely, not to minimize, but
Mm, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. It's, in our world, we go with story. We want to change the story, or we
Uh-huh.
want to change our feeling, or we want to
Uh-huh.
behave differently. All of those are downstream from your nervous system state, right? So if you're working backwards, you're going to really suffer and struggle. You can't change the story. You
Yeah.
can't change the behavior. You can't change the feeling when the state is in keeping you locked in that. So go to
Yeah.
the state instead. Start there. Everything else will organically begin to shift, right? So take the path of least resistance, I guess.
You were teaching us about how state creates story when I was doing a lot of speaking. And so
Yeah.
I was traveling all the time, and I had so many great opportunities to practice that at airports.
Oh, yes. Huh. Yeah.
I was like, oh, I get it. I get it. Yeah.
Right.
And you taught us like, you don't have to change the story, just get curious about what would be available to you if you were in a different state.
Right.
That is
Right.
such a
Yeah.
beautiful, non-threatening exercise. And when I did it at a time that I was fully in dorsal because I was not going to leave that airport that night and I had to speak the next morning and it was bad. And when I did that exercise and I just asked myself, if I could access that ventral vagal, what might my story be? And the second I asked that, it was like scales fell from my eyes and I could suddenly see the people around me. Before that, I was in that survival state. I could only see me. Suddenly the ticket agent, her body language, her sweat, her stress,
Oh.
I was so much more tuned into her experience and what I was or wasn't doing to make it worse or better.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Just from your exercise,
Yeah.
just from that gentle
Yeah.
exercise.
Yeah. It's that knowing that each state has its own story. And they're inside us, whether we're connecting with them or not. And even just listening does not mean I have to follow that story, but it means at least comes to life. And I know, oh, there are two other stories besides the one that I'm stuck in right now. Yeah. When my clients would do that exercise and they'd touch into ventral, the stories they heard were incredible, right? And they would be surprised. They say, I didn't know that story was there. Right. Right? Because it emerges from that place of feeling safe enough to have a story that includes possibility. Yeah. Yeah.
I have 2 pages of little tiny type questions. I just want you to know how much I love you and want to learn from you for 50 and more thousand hours. I won't keep you, but I do want to hear just any closing thoughts you have to educators specifically from your lens, from your
Well,
nervous system.
and I want to say to educators, you have an incredibly difficult job, and especially in the times we're living in right now. So even though it may feel, I know we often we think self-care is selfish, right? Taking care of your nervous system is the best thing you can do for yourself and for your students. Because in the classroom, you are the predictably regulated human in the room, right? That's a responsibility that we take on when we are the adult in the room, to be regulated. I call that, we give our students, the people around us, a disconfirming autonomic experience. Right. They expect, some kids will often expect when they dysregulate that the grown-ups around them dysregulate too. And when you stay regulated, you stay anchored, and you're a safe presence for them, you are giving them a gift that is unbelievable, right? That you can't measure that gift
Yeah.
to another nervous system. But in order to do that, you have to take care of your own nervous system. So please, do what you need. Listen to your system. Ask your system. I often at night, I'll do a small reflection and look back on the day and look at the moments I might have missed that were the good moments, and take them in again.
Mm.
Look at the moments that were challenging and just, say, yep, that happened. Right. And then ask my nervous system, what does it need me to know about what happened today? And it'll give you good information, but then you have to follow it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think, really befriend your system and then honor the wisdom that it's sending you.
Thank you. Thank you for your body of work and your wisdom and your capacity to translate the complex in such usable ways. You're a gift.
Thank you. Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Chris, welcome back.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice interview.
Thank you. Her embodied presence was actual medicine for me the day of that interview.
You said that, and I could tell you actually meant it.
Yeah.
You know what? You said it in your follow-up note to her. That's where I read it.
Okay. Yeah. It really did. I needed it. And so I really noticed. It was my first day back from medical leave, and I was in a pretty dysregulated state, and also just so excited to get to spend time with her, which was, bringing a lot of energy into my system also, and wanting to do a good job, and just saying nothing of the extraordinary content she put forth. But she's like an advertisement for what she preaches. The notion that herself being anchored in ventral and coming into the space with me from that super embodied place had more of an effect on me even than everything she said, which also, of course, had an effect on me.
That's interesting that you opened with that, because you just teed me up for what I was going to open with. And I said this in the beginning, that this interview helped me understand you and helped me understand my reaction to you when I met you. Because well, number one, it changed my definition of kindness, which was really interesting, because now I see it as keeping myself regulated. And then your words were aggressively co-regulating with others. And that's what you've done for me. And I didn't have the words for it. I just knew when I met you, there was something about you that I wanted more of. And as we've joked before, and I don't know if I've said it on this podcast, but listeners, I professionally stalked Michelle until she worked with me and would be my friend. And here we are years later.
Here we are.
But I didn't understand what it was. And I started thinking of examples of things that I saw. And if you remember when I toured Momentous after we were introduced, the thing that was so interesting to me was how when a kid would walk up to you, you would kneel down and get eye to eye and speak to them that way. So that was what first piqued my interest. And then when we started discussing actually working together, we had a lunch, and there was a woman who drove up to the restaurant, and she was clearly dysregulated, not in a good place. I think she had, she was just not in a good space and did not smell well, just things like that. And I watched you walk over to her car, open the door, put your arms around her, walk her all the way into the restaurant, sit her down. And I just remember standing there watching, going, what is it about her that she didn't even blink to do those things? And I think that's it. I think it's your nervous system, and it's you co-regulate with other people well, I guess it is intentional. I just didn't know that.
Yeah.
So it was just really interesting.
So nice. I'm a little verklempt.
Well, I hope that Deb hears it and realizes how impactful her work is, because I just see you do that for people all around you. And it was kind of like years ago when I had the tacky box moment and realized how that micro habit or solution could impact at the macro level. And so I just started thinking about what you've done for me. If educators could learn this and do this for all those kids in the classroom and each other, what the macro impact of that is. And I just got so excited and committed to doing my part of learning how to put this to work too.
I love it. I love everything about that. And actually that tees me up as I teed you up for one of my first things I wanted to talk about, which I felt like Deb articulated in such a potent way, and she said it multiple times, which made it feel to me like this is crucial to her. And I don't know, just like hit me different than it has hit me ever before hearing her speak. But she flipped the frame from willing to able. Like, are people willing to do ... Am I willing to do ... Or am I able to do it because I'm anchored in ventral? Or am I absolutely not able to do it because I'm swallowed up whole by a survival state? And I think about how self-punishing educators can be, and what a relief that reframe might be, that you may not be choosing to be unable to do ... You may not be able to access that at all because of you're kind of stuck in a survival state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And didn't you appreciate how Deb acknowledged straight out of the gates how difficult their job is with so many different nervous systems in the room?
I did. I loved that.
So it just makes perfect sense that they might not be able, even when willing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I hope that lands with people listening.
Yeah, because they're not only are they, depending on where they are on her ladder, not only are they potentially hijacked into that state of fight, flight, or shutdown to the degree that, maybe they want to, have more curious conversations or volunteer for more stuff or this, that, or the other, but they literally can't. And then you add the layer that you just brought in. They are not just responsible for regulating their own nervous system. They, all day long, every day, create the container for all these other little nervous systems to find their way and move up and down the ladder, sometimes dramatically, all day long. Yeah, it was great to hear her say that about the experience of educators, and how it makes me think of, who was it we interviewed that did such a good job of talking about? Oh, it was Alejandra Barbosa. She talked about,
well done.
She talked about like simple, complicated, complex. And it makes me think, like Deb painted the picture of why educators' work is so complex, not just complicated.
And it helped me to hear her say that. Like, it helped me understand better, since I'm not in the profession. So I appreciated that.
Love it.
I loved this comment. When your nervous system brings you that sense of embodied safety, then we can bring our passion and our purpose into the world. We can find joy. We can fall in love with life. And that just gave me such an aha moment, because it's sort of saying safety comes from inside and interior, not exterior. And I felt like she solved my problem of 49 years, not to make it about me, but that I've always been chasing safety externally. So I either wanted to think my way to safety, I wanted to earn my way to safety. And I was she said specifically, you can't think your way to safety. It's not a top-down cognitive experience. Your nervous system has to bring alive the qualities of that ventral place. And I was simultaneously reading Richard Rohr's Falling Upward again. And he talks a lot about first half of life and second half of life. And that first half of life is a survival dance. You're in the survival dance. Second half of life, you're in the sacred dance. So I was reading all that content and really thinking about it from a spiritual lens. And then when I listened to your interview, I felt like she was giving you the how-to manual that goes with the spiritual thinking. So it was like she gave this biological how-to to get to the spiritual place that was in Richard Rohr's book. So I really think they should get together and have a conversation about their work and how it ties together.
If they have.
I don't
know.
So it was really interesting to me. So yeah, I just loved that. And she or you said the key to healing was to be in a dance with your nervous system. And he was talking about survival dance and sacred dance. And I was like, oh, it all works together.
I feel like the fairies are working overtime on your behalf right now, like sequencing all these really interesting things that kind of scaffold on each other and offer you that internal safety.
I really hope those fairies keep it coming.
Come on, fairies. What else you got, or do you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, you're my number 2. You've already hit on, which as you rightfully pointed out, we do that a lot. So let me see what my number 3 was.
If it's mine, I'm going to think the fairies are at it.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Okay, this was later on in the conversation, but I liked how she. This kind of goes to our last point too. It's like, be aware of the willing versus able, but that doesn't remove responsibility from us. And I thought she threaded that needle in such an elegant way that didn't like induce shame, but also didn't like invite lack of responsibility or lack of agency. Because I think agency and a feeling that I can do something is a sign of safety to me. And so if you just talk about the able, willing part of the puzzle, then that's missing. If you just talk about the responsibility side, it gets a little shame spirally. But the way she threaded that needle so beautifully made an impact on me.
I had that as well. That was actually my number 3. And paired with that, she used the phrase, it's just your wiring. And then for me, because she kept saying that it's just your wiring, that's where the shame gets released.
Right.
And I think, as you know, I had a rough day yesterday and got some hard news that caused me to cry all day long, which I would never let myself cry all day long. But I'd listened to that interview and I thought, well, this is just what I need. So I didn't have any shame in it. I just did it.
Yeah.
And so I think that I hope that works for our listeners too.
Yeah.
To just that phrase, it's just your wiring.
It's just your wiring. And it's your wiring working to keep you safe in the best way that it knows how. And then, sometimes that worked at one point in your life, but it doesn't serve you anymore. And sometimes maybe it was always a little, smidge off in terms of doing what it was meant to do or set up to do. But if you can get curious about that, I loved how she talked about curiosity too, and engage, you can start to like have the experience, but then also have an experience of watching the experience, if that makes sense. And so then you get like a little separation from what you're seeing your system do to try to support you, like releasing with tears or whatever it is. And then you like, this point is not coming out how I wish it would, but with that little separation, it moves you away from feeling like I am ... to my system is protecting me by ... And that's like an entirely different experience walking around on the earth if you're sort of piecing it that way.
Well, then you become your soul instead of your mind and body, right?
Yeah.
Because you put that separation there. Question for you on that note about the wiring. I think that you made the comment, which I thought was helpful, that it's framework that is helpful to see other people differently. And I've heard you many times say, like, if we were debriefing an experience with someone, you will say that they were in a dysregulated space. They just had too much coming at them, et cetera, et cetera. How does that impact for you, how you interact with someone who you know is in that state?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to the willing able thing. Like, I take it much less personally if I see that they're dysregulated. I also know that my road in is not going to be cognitive, because if they're in a fully triggered survival state of fight, flight, or shutdown, my work is to create enough safety between us for them to get anchored back up the ladder into ventral. And then we can talk specifics or logic or plan or even consequences. But none of that can take unless they get themselves back into relationship with their nervous system in a way that they can quiet down the survival states enough to bring all that other stuff back online, like curiosity, like innovation, like generosity of spirit, openness, like, widening the lens. Because when we're in a survival state, our lens narrows. Like if you think of evolution, you had to like zero in if you were going to either like get eaten or not. You didn't want to like take in all the landscape. You zeroed in. We still do that when we're in survival state. We zero in. So being able to like know that if I can create some safety, or just know that a certain conversation is not going to happen that day until they're in a different nervous system state. I don't know. It just feels like less permanent, less about them. I'm much less attached to stories.
But you don't just run away, because that's kind of what I was considering.
Like running away from what?
The dysregulated human.
Oh, I'm sure I definitely do that.
I'm just kidding. Okay, well, since I'm asking you questions, can I ask you one more?
Sure.
At the very end of y'all's conversation, you started talking about the stories that you tell yourself in each state, and you gave the airport example and kind of talked about when you realized you were in a certain state, the scales fell off and you could see other people. Will you speak more to that? Because I was intrigued, but I didn't quite understand.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet I didn't explain it very well. And I don't want to like tell the whole story again, because I'm worried people will be like, oh, you just told this, but I do. It probably merits making it clear. Okay, so in Deb's model, she says that state comes before story. And so if I'm in a ventral vagal, that's that top of the ladder, safe and connected, that's going to impact how I see my relationships, myself, the world, right? So I'm going to just say I'm in that top of the ladder state. I'm going to maybe some of the things I might think are, I am loved. My relationships are steady. The world is safe, or any kind of end of sentence to those three, right? But you can get the flavor. The stories I'm going to create if I'm in that sympathetic fight or flight might be, I'm in danger. I can't count on people, or they're out to get me. The world is dangerous, right? And then if I'm in that bottom of the ladder, dorsal vagal shutdown, it could be as dramatic as like, I have no hope. I can't connect with anyone. The world is dark. The world is shut down. The world is not available to me. Things like that. And so the exercise she gave us was to notice where we are on the ladder and what story comes from that nervous system state. And then go through the mental exercise of what else could be true. Like if I were in the middle of the ladder, that fight or flight, what story might I tell myself? And then if I were in ventral, top of the ladder, what story would be available to me? And what was amazing to me about that exercise is I was so dysregulated. It was a very stressful week. It was the end of the week, trying to get to from one speaking gig to the next. And I'd been going up and down the ladder because there's weather and cancellations, And I was big time in that dorsal. It just felt like there were no solutions. Very helpless, hopeless feeling. And that's when I was like, oh, just do the exercise. And it was when I considered what story might be available to me if I was feeling safe and connected and regulated and ventral, then I was like, oh, like just instantly I was like, whoa. I literally could see, I wasn't the central character anymore in the story. I was like just one more passenger. We were all in the same boat. No one was doing this to me. Things like that, and compassion, which I had no compassion for anyone when I was in that triggered state. I was just, overwhelmed. Compassion came online, empathy, generosity, much more paying attention to like, oh, how can I show up in this line of angry people in a way that extends good energy instead of more of the stressed energy, things like that.
I'm so glad I asked you. That was very helpful.
Was it? Okay,
yeah,
good.
Very
Thank
helpful.
You for
Thank
asking.
You.
Thank you for telling me it wasn't complete. All right. So what else? Or do you want me to give one?
Sure.
Well, I love micro moments. She's really, really good at giving people sticky things to think about. Like not too long ago, her concept of glimmers went viral. And basically she says, there's a lot of talk in our culture of what it is that triggers us into fight or flight or shutdown. But what is it that glimmers us up the ladder into that ventral? Like nature, pets, certain foods, certain friends, whatever. Do we pay as much attention to that list as we do to the things that like suck us into survival states? That's just one example. The glimmers thing is an example of how sticky her languaging and thinking is. Another to me is the micro moments. Because anytime you introduce something that can be life-changing to an overwhelmed, exhausted teacher or educator, and it feels like it's going to require some huge life overhaul, who could consider it?
Mm-hmm.
But when you think about micro moments, and just like, am I willing to be in this dynamic relationship with my own nervous system and try to kind of like feed it nutrients in micro moments? That's an entirely different proposition.
I felt like that was another example of kind of the spiritual and the biological coming together, because like I think of now the purpose of life is really just a series of those little magic moments from a spiritual standpoint. And her work tied to micro moments helped me get out of that head and heart place, which is where I operate, and be able to think about it in the body.
Whoa.
And you know how I always say I hate the word embody because I don't get it. It kind of helped me get it.
Oh my God, so Deb, if you're listening, you have no idea what a big deal this is.
I know when you said embodied earlier, it didn't make me cringe because I was like, oh, okay, I think I'm getting this thing.
I'm starting to get it.
I'm remedial.
No, you're not remedial at all, but you've always had such a strong feeling about that. So to hear you say experiencing Deb created like a little bit of a drop in for you.
It was helpful. And it also, it makes the importance and just the criticality of those moments not feel fluffy.
Right.
Like they're kind of everything.
Yeah. They're everything.
Everything.
That's it. Like, I think that's the big punchline. All of the things we do to help ourselves move up the ladder and stay in ventral as long as possible, and all the things we do for the people in our lives that help them move up the ladder and stay up there a little bit longer, that's the game. Because what I learned from Deb is that once someone's up there, their natural genius will just flow through them. You don't have to solve all the problems that need to get solved. You just have to get them or support them getting themselves into that regulated nervous system, and then the rest really does take care of itself.
And I don't think I've ever quite understood why you always say that's your work in the world, is to work on your own nervous system. And now I get it. And I just really, I hope that resonates with educators, because again, I'm just, the impact that learning this or thinking about it even at the macro level is tremendous.
When I first really learned kind of this theory to the degree that I did studying with Deb, I had already been talking about well-being in the nervous system for over a decade, but it didn't come home in a way that felt like what you're talking about until I learned it from Deb. That was really what made it so clear. Like, oh, this is the game. That we're getting it all wrong, and it removes any narrative of self-care or community care being selfish. It makes it make sense why that has to happen first and why that's central when you look at it through the lens of Deb's work.
Yeah, I would say it removes selfish or fluffy or simple or it's huge impact.
Yeah.
So it's very exciting.
Did you happen to see the thing I texted you about Richie Davidson and Cortland Dahl's new book, Born to Flourish?
No, I think I missed that.
Okay, I'm going to find it really quick and read it because this is so connected to Deb's work and to the educators listening. Okay, so this was from an email I got from Service. Oh my gosh, now I'm blanking on. Oh my gosh, I really don't want to. Service Space, an incredible online community if anybody wants to check them out. But in the email they sent, quote, "Here's something that surprised even the researchers. When large-scale studies tried teaching mindfulness directly to children in schools, the results were disappointing. In some cases," they use the word at risk, I don't love that, but quote unquote, at risk kids got worse. So they flipped the approach. Instead of starting with the children, they trained the teachers. A few minutes of practice a day, the teachers changed and then the classrooms changed with them. Nobody taught the kids the curriculum. The flourishing was simply contagious. Over 600 peer-reviewed studies later, Richie and Court have distilled the science into 4 trainable capacities: awareness, connection, insight, and purpose, which is what they talk about in their new book. To me, the overlap of that and what you're saying about how Deb's work could transform the entire educational ecosystem, it felt like it tied together.
It does. And I did see that. I wasn't making the connection. Yes. Thank you for sharing that and bringing that up.
Yeah. And it just goes to show, like, the number one thing any of us have to offer, period, end of sentence, is a regulated nervous system.
And on that note, I made kind of a short list of ideas that popped out in the conversation that could be tidbits of oxygen for our listeners. One, to create your list of things that help you get to ventral. And she did say to have a massive list and do it when you're in a good space so that you don't have to try to think of it when you're not, which I loved. And the question she said to think about was, what brings you a moment of feeling okay? Some examples were connection, music, art, movement, nature. And then I also loved the, what was the term you guys used?
Autonomic intimacy.
Intimacy, yes. And so I thought, well, create that list and share it with a colleague, or even do it with the classroom and let your kids share it and everybody share it with each other. I loved the playlist idea. So I thought making the playlist for each stage could be helpful to educators, to have that just kind of on standby. And then lastly, I loved the idea of making collages. And I thought that could be a fun thing to do with students or colleagues.
Totally.
So I loved that.
And you wouldn't even have to like explain the whole enchilada for your kids to get like a
Right.
really rich experience of just thinking about what are the things that are glimmers of safety for them, and then share why and what they notice. And that is befriending the nervous system. Even if your students are younger and that language is too much, like you can teach them to be in relationship with their nervous system before they can even understand that language.
And what I liked about that idea was not to suggest another to-do for educators, but because she talked about, Deb spoke about how the regulated kids, if they're showing up regulated, they can be the educator's ally for that day. And so being able to recognize who's on your team to help for that day would be helpful to the adults in the building, as you always say.
It's such a good teaser because I think our interview coming up in a couple weeks is with Pernille Rip, and she talks about that exact thing, that that the classroom kind of culture climate has to be co-owned and created with your students. And same, like those little regulated nervous systems in the room, they can do some heavy lifting too. It doesn't have to be all on the adult in the front.
I love it. Anything you want to close with?
Oh man. I mean, we talked about the whole befriending versus mastering, I think is critical. She says you're in a relationship with your nervous system forever, which I think is just like such a velvet hammer that this isn't a protocol that solves you. It's like just an ongoing conversation, and in the same way you would be in an ongoing conversation with the most important people in your life that are in human form.
And then the second piece of that, which I had jotted down, was, and you have to honor the wisdom of your system. Mm-hmm. I feel like I need to tattoo that somewhere.
Mm-hmm. So can you say more? I think I know what you mean, but I just want to make sure.
Well, I think it's the natural tendency is just to ignore it, right? And keep going. And as you guys talked about, power through and not listen, like not actually honor the wisdom that's being shared with you. But I liked how she said the power through, the no pain, no gain doesn't work.
Yeah, she was very definitive in that moment. Mm-hmm. It was powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's contrary to what we know about the nervous system, not what we think,
right?
But what we know.
For those of us who like to be a little rebellious, it's kind of fun to think about. Like, okay, that is contrary to mainstream, so it kind of sounds fun.
Yeah, it really flips it on its head. It's like regulate your nervous system. Then what felt so hard suddenly feels so easy. It comes from a place of such embodied, grounded integrity that it looks like genius, even though it might just be, something you thought of, something you put into the world, something you whatever. But because it's coming from that regulated nervous system, it's just like flowing. It's happening. So it's like we got the order wrong. Like in our culture, it seems like the order is get everything perfect so that you can do blah, blah, blah. And this says like, do the things that help you feel safe and everything will come out, quote unquote, perfect. But does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So I think it's like a little bit of it's really hard to get your head around it and then it clicks. And
for me, the words are, it's like exterior and interior. So it's looking a different direction.
Wow. Say more.
It's just what I said kind of in the beginning. comparing it to the Richard Rohr falling upward. It just, when you're looking for safety or outside of you, it's dependent on external conditions. Whereas if you're just looking inside and looking at your own nervous system, it's not that you're in control, but kind of in a different level. You are kind of more in control.
Because you can, to a degree, curate your experience once you start doing this work, because it's like a balance equation of signs of safety, signals of danger. So if you're in the world in 2026, there's a lot of signals of danger coming at us all day long, every day. It's by design because it keeps your eyes peeled, it keeps you tuning in, it keeps you scrolling, whatever. So the way that you move up the ladder is you get more signs of safety than signals of danger. So the external piece is, there's signs of danger coming at us and there's signals of safety. But once you know that, the internal piece is, I can shape my day so that I am noticing the good stuff. I'm taking it in. I'm expounding it and its impact on me. You saw her do that when we talked about the word Technicolor. You saw her do that in real time. Like, I can do those things so that my signals of safety in my nervous system are higher than whatever signs of danger. And when that happens, then you're moving up the ladder. So like, if people just want one very practical thing they can walk away and do, just start paying attention to what their nervous system experiences as signs of safety and build those things into their life every day, as much as they possibly can. And then pay attention to what their nervous system experiences as signals of danger and mitigate the impact of that to the degree you can, which could be, not scrolling as much as you once did, or having a boundary with a certain family member that you didn't think really mattered that much until you put in this frame, things like that.
Love it.
Awesome. Anything else?
No, I like ending with a practical tip, and that was a good one.
Awesome. Well, I thank you, Chris, and I thank Deb Dana so much for her contribution. What an extraordinary thinker, practitioner, therapist, person. So grateful to have her in our lexicon.
Same, and thank you for bringing her on. It was so impactful for me, clearly, and I know it will be for our listeners as well.
Awesome. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Oxygen for Educators. Please like, share, and follow, and if inclined, leave us a 5-star review so that we can keep making content for you. Let us hear from you if you know someone we should interview or a topic we should cover.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any organization. The content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to use their own judgment and seek appropriate professional support when needed. Oxygen for Educators, its host, and production partners are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast.